2020 is crazy. 2020 is like so crazy. 2020 sucks. I hate 2020. 2020 is so bad for me. I need it to end. I need 2020 to end. 2020 is the craziest thing ever. I hate that people are saying that. I hate it because they're blaming it on the year. It's not 2020's fault. 2020 is a number. 2020 is just a thing that gets put in a calendar. It really means nothing, right? It's just a date organizer. But don't blame it on the year. Don't blame it on 2020 because it's not 2020's fault. Back when slavery was a thing, people weren't like, oh man, 1804, this year's a bitch, because they didn't use that vernacular, but also nobody would blame it on the year because it's a stupid concept. It's not like God is up in the sky saying, hey, guys, we need to cut this crap out when 2021 rolls around because this has been a bad year for them. Am I right? I mean, I don't think God sounds like that, but why are we blaming it on the year? Why are the Jews use a lunar calendar, so the year is technically 5781, which also means nothing. It means nothing. It's just a number. 2020 isn't crazy, we are. 2020 isn't crazy, we are. I'm crazy. Look at me. I'm crazy right now. I probably come off that way because of how 2020 is making me, but everything that's bad that's happening in 2020 is because of us, right? Everything that's bad that happens in the world is because of humans. It's our fault. It's all our fault. The effects of climate change, that's our fault. The reason there's a freaking madman in the White House, that's our fault. Either you're the direct reason of it, you idly stood by, or you didn't fight hard enough against it. You fall into one of those three categories. There's no one else. You can't just be a 2020 sucks, bro. Cough it up to that, right? Because it's just a number. Like, what is it? It means nothing. It didn't do anything to you. And the same stuff is going to happen in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. And you get it because the numbers keep going higher. I could keep going on. Nothing's going to change unless we do. Nothing's going to change unless we do. So yes, there are powers that be, higher powers that make things worse, that didn't handle coronavirus in the right way, so we're going to be wearing masks for a while. But there are also people who don't wear masks. Why? I don't know. Maybe because they have a brain made of bricks? But again, that falls on people. That falls on us. And the majority of our problems fall on us. And the majority of other people's problems that don't affect you also fall on you. They're also probably your fault. You are some cog in the system that leads to other problems in the world, whether that's financial distress, environmental problems, climate change, whatever you want to call it. 2020 is not crazy. We are. I promise you. We're the ones who made this so bad. Okay.
Hot, dry winds forever blowing, dead men to the graveyard going, constant hearses, funeral verses. Oh, what plagues, there is no knowing. Priests retreating from their pulpits, some in hot and some in cold fits. In bad temper off they scamper, leaving us unhappy culprits. Doctors raving and disputing, death's pale army still recruiting. What a pother, one with t'other. Some a writing, some a shooting. Nature's poisons here collected, water, earth, and air infected. Oh, what pity, such a city was in such a place erected.
Buying a house is a massive undertaking. Buying a house in the midst of a global pandemic and national shutdown feels impossible. It's possible, but it's insane to try it just 3 months into a new job, and it's exhausting to go through the process solo. I wasn't looking to buy a house this spring. I'd been renting for 8 years, the longest tenant in my building. I loved the location, the privacy afforded by my neighbors, and the amenities. I had learned to live with the amount of time it took my landlord to reply to texts, and the lengthier time to actually address issues with the apartment. When my roof started leaking, as it had in 2014, I notified him immediately, and buckled in for the anticipated long wait. But then my mother sent me a link to a virtual house tour. The house was in my neighborhood. It was actually less than 2 blocks from my apartment. I could even see it from my 3rd floor patio. It was full of light and looked to have plenty of room for bookcases, of which I then owned 5. I sent the video to my real estate agent, Jason, a serendipitous match made 2 years earlier by Zillow's algorithm in response to a question about a house in North Bethlehem. Jason was surprised to hear from me. He knew I had only just started my new job after months of searching. So even though he had seen this house and felt it ticked most of my boxes, he was hesitant to reach out. But I had beaten him to the punch. The biggest hurdle was trying to view it live, since the housing market, like everything else not required to sustain life, was shut down. Within an hour, Jason had word from the seller that the house was unoccupied, making it safer than most. And the owner usually showed up to check on it maybe once a week. So if the owner happened to be there, mowing the lawn, and happened to leave the front door open, and Jason and I happened to meet on the sidewalk out front while the owner was present, there could be a second serendipitous match. It also happened that the owner was planning on mowing the lawn the following day between 4 and 5 p.m. Jason and I agreed to meet for coffee. From there, it's sort of a blur. I made an offer, they countered, and I accepted and got full seller's assist. I got an inspection, and then I got my hackles up over a leak in the basement. I got a plumber, they got a plumber, and we got a diagnosis. I got a mortgage approved, which was no easy task with just 3 months worth of paychecks for them to go on, but having a nearly perfect credit score probably helped. I got homeowner's insurance, I bought a refrigerator, which was the only appliance not included with the house. I hired a moving company, recommended by a friend whose judgment I would have trusted even had she not moved 3 times in the last 8 years. I was warned that my closing would mean signing my name more times than you ever imagined. I took a half-day vacation so I could do a final walkthrough with Jason before signing on for a 30-year loan. I was told initially we'd have to sign in our cars to keep everybody distanced, but that day saw torrential downpours, so the broker agreed to allow us inside. Myself, the seller's wife, our respected agents, and the broker all sat around a table designed for twice as many people, with masks in place. I signed my name at least 20 times, and I handed over a check for half the amount in my savings account. I took umbrage at a document that noted my first and last name, and then in all capitals and bold typeface, single woman. The pressure and the loneliness of the last few weeks surfaced abruptly. What's that supposed to mean? Why is that necessary? The broker sighed. It just means that nobody else has a financial interest in the house. That made sense, but I was still ruffled. The seller's wife joked with me. When I got married, the certificate was all done in beautiful cursive and we wanted to get it framed. That was until I saw it said my name, and then spinster, because it was my first marriage. I swallowed the word patriarchy when I realized it was her and I in a room full of male agents. I made it through the closing, took my new ring of keys, and with no fanfare went back to my apartment to continue packing. I slowly resumed the Swedish death cleanse my sister had started in December of 2018, the last time I even looked at a house, and which had lost steam when she returned to the West Coast. I tried to convince her to fly out for this next wave and for the move, but her anxiety about COVID wouldn't allow her even as far as the airport, let alone on a plane and safely to Pennsylvania. I bought or was given cardboard boxes, bubble wrap, and Gorilla Brand packing tape, and began to dismantle nearly half a decade of living in one space. I said absolutely nothing on social media, largely because most of my friends had been furloughed or laid off and were worried about making rent, and here I was making a down payment. I had a few close friends who knew and offered to help, but it's hard when you're being told to physically distance. In the last week before moving, I did have 2 friends in my apartment, at separate times of course, and all wearing masks for the duration. With the help of one of them, I made it through the big move in the last weekend of July. 3 stops, 3 movers, and 9 hours later, I had to sleep on my futon in my living room because my queen-size box spring wouldn't fit around the 100-plus-year-old railing up the stairs. That was the first problem I had to solve as a new homeowner. I was in the house less than 2 weeks when Tropical Storm Isaias hit and flooded the basement. 3 inches of water at the deepest point on the partially finished side with a full bar, discovered at 10 p.m. That night. I logged into a Google Hangout the next morning, just long enough to ask my boss for a last-minute half-day's vacation so I could seek a solution at Lowe's. He not only granted the time, but offered to try and help me source a submersible pump. There was none to be had, but the second hardware store I called said they had been sold out since the day before, but they might expect a new shipment the next day. I also thought to look for a wet/dry vacuum, but the only one available was in Allentown for $22 a day. On a whim, I texted one of my new colleagues, who had joined the team 3 weeks after me, but the same week we all went remote. This meant that I had never seen him outside of the confines of a computer screen. Not only did he have a vac, he had more than one and was willing to make a long-term loan on one he rarely used. My excitement at having sourced the vac was eclipsed by getting to meet him in person for the first time. When I hopped out of my car 35 minutes later, in a remote township off of Route 33, my first words were, "It's you!" From behind the mask, he showed me how to operate the vacuum and thought to include a 20-foot extension cord, since neither of us knew the size of the basement. On my way back, I stopped off at the same local hardware store for fans and managed to make it back and triage the basement before Lafayette's shared lunch hour was over at 1. I was showered, dressed, and ready for our staff meeting not long after. My director asked via chat if the problem was resolved and if I was okay, but didn't press for further details. I managed to save the linoleum in the bar, where I hadn't even had a chance yet to unpack any of my fancy adult liquor bottles. I lost only 1 cardboard box that had been left on the bar's floor before the storm, but the Christmas ornaments inside it were all saved. I gained real confidence in my decisions as a homeowner, as well as the admiration of the insurance claims adjuster who said my quick thinking had mitigated any real damage to the basement. I recognized the care and concern my director had for his team, and realized also the generous friend I had found in my newest teammate. Buying a house is a massive undertaking, and one I thought I had taken on alone. But it was in recognizing my capability and my community that made me start to think of it as a home. Once we are clear of COVID, I cannot wait to welcome that community in for a housewarming. No, scratch that, a home warming.
Listen, the last stroke of death's noon has struck. The plague is come, a gnashing madman said. Then laid him down straightway upon his bed. His writhed hands did at the linen pluck. Then all is over. With a careless chuck, among his fellows he is cast. How sped? His spirit matters little. Many dead make men hard-hearted. Place him on the truck. Go forth into the burial ground and find room. As to so much a pitfall for so many, one thing is to be done. One thing is clear. Keep thou back from the hot, unwholesome wind, that it infect not thee! Say, is there any who mourneth the multitude dead here?
This poem was created out of numerous documents, articles, Twitter posts, memo letters, press release, and phrases I read during the last few days. The poem was written on June 5th, 2020. It is not fully my original work. It is a curation of phrases and legacy of many activists and organizations I support and follow. It's called Protest is Essential Work. Protest is essential work. This racial street theater against Black people is an endemic, primal feature of the Republic. Whereas peaceful demonstrations began in the city in response to the death of George Floyd, a Black man in Minneapolis who died after one or more officers knelt on his neck, the latest in a long line of deaths of Black men and women that have sparked protests across our nation. But demonstration activities were subsequently escalated by some persons to include actions of assault, vandalism, property damage, and/or looting. As we struggle to adjust to life in this pandemic, there remains the hard work of fighting the epidemic of racism in the United States. Racism is one of the most insidious forces in this country. We want you to know that we will always stand up to reject all forms of discrimination and injustice. This is the right thing to do, and now is the time. Protest is essential work, but the fact that Mr. Floyd was even arrested, let alone killed, for the inconsequential crime of forgery amid the pandemic that has killed, has taken the life of one of every 2,000 African Americans in the chilling affirmation that Black lives still do not matter in the US. These protests are a response to the failure of Mayor de Blasio and decades of previous elected officials who have sanctioned daily state violence against Black people in New York. They are the manifestation of generations of Black people who have struggled to breathe with the weight of America's anti-Black racism on our necks. I demand that charges be pressed against all officers involved in this heinous racist murder, including specifically Derek Chauvin and Tu Tao. They should not be allowed to keep their jobs and should be charged and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for manslaughter. A state of emergency is hereby declared to exist within the city of New York. This order should not apply to individuals performing essential work, people traveling from and to essential work. Protest is essential work. Attention, Black people may appear more dangerous to ignorant minds. World-renowned medical examiner Dr. Michael Baden and Dr. Alicia Wilson found the manner of Mr. Floyd's death was homicide, caused by asphyxia due to neck and back compression that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain. Sustained pressure on the right side of Mr. Floyd's carotid artery impeded blood flow to the brain, and weight on his back impeded his ability to breathe. The independent examiners found that the weight on the back handcuffs, and positioning were contributory factors because they impaired the ability of Mr. Floyd's diaphragm to function. From all the evidence, the doctor said it now appears Mr. Floyd died at the scene. Your country does not stand for you, but has a problem when you kneel. Your country does not stand for you, but has no problem kneeling on you. The young and the old lie in the ground in the streets. Thou hast killed and not pitied. Blackness signifies an inherited state of groundlessness, never having a place to land, to ground ourselves, to feel safe in the world. And yet the amassing of that black political power could not stop the quotidian police brutality. Protest is essential work. Most protests remain peaceful until cops arrive and incite violence. Police officers kneeling means that you have a certain amount of time before they start to tear gas protesters. Although Freedom Fighters DC does not condone violence, when faced with violence, we encourage our supporters to protect themselves. Our goal is that every participant is able to make it home safely without any injuries. But in order for nonviolence work, your opponent must also be nonviolent. And in America, that is not the case by far. They're gassing them babies as they did us. Protest is essential work. Anger, to quote Audre Lorde, is loaded with information and energy. Our anger does not allow us to pretend that these murders are exceptional or an aberration. Our anger reminds us that their deaths are constitutive to the anti-black secular logics the United States was founded on. It is not just the higher rates of death that fuel this anger, but also publicized cases where African Americans have been denied healthcare because nurses or doctors didn't believe their complaints about their symptoms. Just as maddening is the assumption that African Americans bear personal responsibility for dying in disproportionate numbers. Society will either bend to accommodate our glory or break under the weight of its own arrogance. Either way, we will be free. You're lucky Black people want justice and not revenge.
Hi everyone! This week on Science with Samantha, we are going to talk about soap. How does it work? And I have a fun demonstration that you can do at home with your children to demonstrate why it's important that you wash your hands. And we're at the beginning of cold and flu season, and the coronavirus is very much a part of our lives still. So now more than ever, it's important that we wash our hands frequently. First of all, let's think about what soap does. It's basically made up of two molecules. One will break down the virus or the oils or the grease, and the other helps wash it away. Think about a dirty dish in your sink. If you just rinse it with water, it stays kind of greasy and kind of dirty. But the second you add dish soap, those molecules start breaking apart the oil and the grease, and it will be washed down the drain. And you have a clean plate. Same thing with your hands with the virus. The coronavirus, for example, is covered in a lipid. A lipid is basically a fat. So you need the soap to break down that virus and wash it down the drain. So this is a very easy experiment. First of all, you take your plate. If you use a lighter colored plate, it'll be easier to see it. And all you're going to do is fill it with some water. Now we have some water. Then you're going to take your pepper. This is pepper from my kitchen. And you are going to cover your water with black pepper. Then you're going to take your finger and you're going to put it in here. Some of the pepper sticks to your hand, and it's really hard to get the water clean. Try to push some of that pepper away. It doesn't go anywhere. Here is where soap comes into play. So take soap and cover your finger with some soap. And take your finger and put it in the clean plate with the pepper and watch the pepper be chased away from the soap to the edges. So there's your fun experiment on why you should be washing your hands and how soap actually works.
I would do it all differently. I would pay some attention, have some sympathy. I would have treated Fellowship like the friend that he is. Fellowship? Fellowship, there he is. Fellowship, it's me, it's every man. Please, try to listen. Try to listen if you can. Fellowship, I'm sorry. I acted like a jerk. I thought I would have a do-over, but that's not how it works. If I knew this was the real end, I would have never expected you to come. Not really, not when all was said and done. You're just a kid. Your life has barely begun. And I'm sorry that you have to live with the guilt that I've inflicted. If you can hear me, please know that I had it all twisted. If you can hear me, Fellowship? Can you hear me at all? If you can hear me, Fellowship? Can you hear me at all? I can feel myself slipping. I think I'm about to fall. And Kindred and Cousin, my brothers and letters, we have made the stupidest decisions together. It's time to wake up, guys. It's time to get with it. Tomorrow, death could be paying you a visit. And would you really be able to die with conscience clean? I know you guys know what I mean. And for our sisters and letters, my question is the same. We all need to reevaluate the rules of this game. And if I could touch down on Earth one more time, I would own up to the mistakes that I know are mine. But I can't do that now. Some things are set in stone. And now I'm left in guilt, and guilt all alone. And now I'm left in guilt, and guilt and all alone. And goods! You swindled me, and you knew you could. You're sneaky, and despite your good name, you're no damn good. I'm just a cog in your capitalist wheel. I consume you and presume you care how I feel. You twisted my perception of the meaning of valuable, took advantage when I was young and naive and malleable. What if I removed myself from the mess you always get us in? A new laissez-faire, a taste of your own medicine. I'm saying now that I'm better off without you, I wish people on Earth would start to doubt you. Because you've got me. I've been had. It's true. But if the consumer isn't consuming, then what does that make you? I wish people would start to doubt you. You're meaningless, and I cared so much. And all I want now is just warm human touch, and no one is going to hear my call. No one's going to hear my screams at all. For someone who was deaf and blind on Earth, I guess it's kind of funny. Ironic that hindsight is 20/20.
I am not who they say I am. I am not who I want to be. I am evil, or the physical representation of it. At least that's what the townspeople say. To the outside world, the anomaly of my being is illuminated by the awaiting masses and preyed upon by those who are engulfed in the sea of light. But now it is all over. I'm on the outside looking out and around. I'm among the people who set forth and watch my demise open-heartedly and with youthful enthusiasm. There I am in that cold chair, my wrists and legs fastened, fabric covering my face so that the gods did not have to see my face as the electrodes maneuvered through my flesh, burning me from the outside in. I'm rotting. Now on the outside, no longer intertwined with the body, sitting lifeless in that chair, I thought I would feel free, but I did not. I felt more trapped than I have ever been. Not trapped by chains, but of the burdens of the gods, their pains, their inner darkest secrets, no longer protected by their holy water and manipulative narrative. Now they are revealed, and what I see is scarier than the guy who had banged the gavel and the guy who pulled that switch, turning me from man to memory. I see the erection forming in Deputy Lawson's pants as he looked at my crisp body, the smell having aroused him more than his wife ever could. The passion that filled Donald Lee's eyes, the pride that David Washington felt in his heart knowing that his idea of justice is not just being practiced but upheld. Lula Kirk's face stayed the same. She did not smile. She just closed her eyes, allowing a single tear to drip down her left cheek. She knew what she did, but nobody will know. Nobody ever really knows, except me. But the dead cannot talk.
And people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played and learned new ways of being and stopped and listened deeper. Someone meditated, someone prayed, someone danced, someone met their shadow. And people began to think differently. And people healed. And in the absence of people who lived in ignorant ways, dangerous, meaningless, and heartless, even the earth began to heal. And when the danger ended and people found each other, grieved for the dead people, and they made new choices and dreamed new visions and created new ways of life and healed the earth completely.